So short-term rentals are really tough, and they're getting a lot of heat. I'm going to kick it back to Frank now to finish that story.
Yeah.
But in general, the institutions just hate that asset class. And as an investor, I hate that asset class.
They hate it because it's
because they don't understand it. And we didn't truly fully understand it in Florida until yesterday, where we sat with some big attorneys and a big builder and a big developer who helped us understand all the components that go to the legislation in Florida that allow us and protect the borrower. Right? Because the biggest issue is, you've seen around the country, New York's the latest case, right? That they just cut Airbnbs. Charleston's done it. Lots of places have done it because you're driving housing values way too high off of projected rents on short-term rentals.
So it's unpredictable, right? One of the things is like you can't take into consideration the short-term rental rates because that market is changing every day, right? Like the appetite for vacationing as a whole is, it's up and it's down. But what's interesting about Florida is tourism is one of the major economic drivers here, right? The coastlines are where people like everywhere from around the world come to vacation.
And there's a lot of them here surrounding the entire state.
Right. And so we didn't really understand, and this is what's super interesting. It's impossible to know everything about every market, every rule set. It's impossible. So being able to speak to different guys in different niches of the real estate market really helped us, piece everything together. So now we have this story, and this is what was super interesting. We learned yesterday that there are, there are pieces of legislature that protect the short-term rental business. It's a no income tax here, right? So one of the biggest drivers is the tourism tax. So if you turn that off in Florida, I mean, that's a massive hit to the state economy. And so we just figured out that builders, developers are protected by a piece of legislature called the Burt-Harris law, something around that nature. That basically grandfathers in your ability to run short-term rentals. Now, why that is important is because prior to us understanding that, it was the same as every other market. We could turn this faucet off tomorrow, and then, the unpredictability that is STRs, the nightmare comes to fruition, and, all these loans that you funded based off short-term rental rates, go in the shitter. But we learned that that's not really, that's not a fear here. Right, because there's legislature that protects the owners, builders, developers. So now we can take that information, bring the legislature, bring the story, in addition to us understanding the ecosystem of the builders down there where they get their capital. It's a whole.
You guys have to work very hard on both ends. You have to work very hard on the construction site, building a relationship with the borrower, but then also information like that to take to your investors.
Yeah, and that's him, right? So he's the front line with all the Wall Street guys,
right?
Yeah, and he goes and tells the story.
Fascinating.
Right? That's his job. Aside from visiting all of his LOs and all these different markets and being boots on the ground.
So that bit of information makes this market a lot more attractive for short term.
100%. And the state legislature does allocate some control to the local municipalities in those areas, but they can't supersede what the state legislation does. So even though Anna Maria we learned yesterday, Anna Maria was 6,000 permanent residents, now down to 850 permanent residents.
Whoa.
Yeah,
and the rest is short-term rentals, rental product, right? So it's become a rental ecosystem, and Anna Maria municipality can't change that. They could change some occupancy of the houses, but they can't go to the state legislature and go, we're changing this. We don't want short-term rentals, which you don't have in many geographies.
What's the name of the law again, Frank?
Burt-Harris.
Can you pull that up? That's fascinating because I would imagine residents of Anna Maria would be pissed, of course.
Super pissed.
Yeah.
And lobby their commission and their local municipality and lobby the state and say, dude, we need this law changed. But it sounds like they can't do it at all. It's already been established. So is this a new law?
No,
Burt-Harris?
This is a 13-year-old law.
I think it was 11, 13.
13-year-old law. And this was a component of it. There was also another, and we'll get it for you so we can cite it in the podcast, but there's another component to this. But this is around kind of occupancy laws in Florida.
So we knew nothing about this, right? And so we were ready to shut the faucet off because we're like, we have too much risk, too much exposure. Nobody's buying these notes. We're holding everything on our balance sheet, and we have very good relationships with our builders. But it was getting to a point where it was like, guys, we're tapped, we're tapped. And then we uncover all this information, the story changes. And that's what's, crazy about this business, is a roller coaster ride because you're up one day, you're down the next. I'm sure you experience the same on your side of the industry, G. But
so Burt J. Harris Jr. Private Property Rights Protection Act in 1995. It was amended in 2008 and 2011, like you guys said, 13 or so years ago. provides a specific process for landowners to seek relief when their property is unfairly affected by government action. Under the Act, a claim exists if a governmental entity inordinately burdens an existing use of real property or a vested right to real property. So like you just said, if the local municipality tries to change the law, someone could cite this and ideally be protected. Very interesting.
So actually, our big developers, Frank's big customers, they fought this. They've tested this. They've went to the bat and won. One of them won $1 million from one of the cities. It wasn't Anna Maria, right? But they won $1 million in the lawsuit as it relates to them picking on them for building short-term rentals up and down the East Coast.
Short-term rentals really is only one component. This could be applied to any use a local municipality would try to impose on a property owner.
Correct.
So, wow. So, man, you guys finding out information like this in specific local markets is, I feel like, key to opening up massive funding.
That's the difference between doing $20 million worth of business to $200 million worth of business. If you can show the story and say, hey, guys, your money's protected here for these reasons, that's what opens
and
things
the case
up.
law and developers going to court, as precedent. Like there's
I'm going to take a shot at our competitors. This is the difference between I-Fund Cities and the rest of the lending community. That's a national lender versus us, which is a mid-Atlantic, southeastern lender, right? With guys in the market understanding and learning every day how to support developers.
That's a good point.
You're not getting that from Renovo. You're not getting that from Chiavi. You're not getting that from Lima.
They're pencil pushers.
A guy from California, right? They wouldn't even believe something like this existed. This would be a pretty extreme law in certain
states. Been here
for
3 years. I had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. There was controversy about, I know St. Pete, was it Clearwater or St. Pete put a law in place that limited short-term rentals. I'm sure this has come up a lot. I mean, you could wreck somebody's property value.
That's where I
overnight.
Yeah, overnight.
So how, as we have lender, how do we put them in a loan that we know, if we don't understand this stuff, how do you put them in a loan and go, good luck?
Now, how are you guys finding...
What's that? That's not lending. That's not helping.
And we're doing a bad job, right? Because I always tell my clients, hey, it is my job to put you into a good loan, right? So if I think that this is going to end shitty for you, like I'm telling you, and if you decide to move forward with it, like by all means, that's your decision to make. But it's my job to let you know these are my concerns from my side of the aisle.